And tonight, I felt like the Lord gave me this, and the title of this message is Sin Lies at the Door. Last week, we talked about not cutting ties and stuff like that. This week, this is what God put on my heart, and I could not get it off my heart. I was actually thinking about it the other day, and I was reading it, and I was not expecting to preach tonight. We actually had something else planned, and something fell through. So we're going to go to Genesis chapter 4. Now, this is a newer translation. It says, Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now, Abel kept the flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought forth some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel's and his offering. But on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is, listen, this is straight up. The reason Cain's wasn't accepted is because he didn't have faith that it would be accepted. Abel did. So it wasn't just that Cain, it wasn't the actual offering itself as much as how it was brought forth to God. Now understand that in these days, God talked just like this with Cain and Abel. Okay, Cain and Abel is the sons of Adam and Eve. So you remember Adam and Eve were in the garden with God, and he walked with them every day. And then after they fell, he didn't just, once they sinned, he wasn't like, you know what, I'm not going to have nothing more to do with you. He actually made them clothes because they knew they were naked. So God made them clothes and gave them clothes to wear. And then told them, okay, you got to fill the earth with people. So start having kids. Kicked them out of the garden because the garden was a holy place. Kicked them out of the garden and said, now you got to work the land and stuff like that. You actually have to earn a living by working. So then Cain, they had Cain and Abel. Remember, Cain was a farmer, and Abel was like a rancher. Okay? So then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what's right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door, and it desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Now that was the part that really caught my eye. He said, if you do not do what is right, sin is lying at the door, and it desires to have you. It desires to have you. And guys, I'm here to tell you right now, sin is destructive. Every person out there at that prison had to make decisions whether they were going to do the right thing or the wrong thing. I'm talking about inmates. Okay? That's a maximum security prison. So the people in there are literally murderers, rapists, serial killers, that kind of stuff. Okay? As bad as it gets right here at this prison. Now, many of you guys, your parents work there. You know that. Right? So God had direct talk with Cain right here, right? Remember I said he talked to him just like this. So imagine this. Cain's messing up. God's like, listen, man, you got to bring that offering a different way. You can't just throw it at me. You need to bring your best and bring it with a heart that's for me. Except he's not like this. It's not like he's like this. Okay? Now watch. It's not like he's like this. You got to do this. I know you can't see me. But I'm telling you, you got to do this. You hear it? You guys hear me? What I told him is I said, hey, you got to do this. I know you can't see me, but you got to do that. It wasn't like that. It was like this. Hey, listen, you got to do this way. Cain could see him and he could see Cain. Okay? So it's not like it is now where you guys believe out of faith, right? Who in here has ever actually seen God? I have not. But I believe He's real. So that's faith, right? But Cain actually had like face-to-face contact with Him. And God goes, listen, sin is lying outside your door and it wants to have you. You have to rule over this. Did God know do you guys know what happened between Cain and Abel? Okay, hold on. So God's having this conversation with Cain. Why are you angry? Why are you looking all down? If you do what's right, I'll accept you. But if you don't, the devil's waiting outside any chance he gets, he's going to jump on you. And he wants to devour you. He wants to have you and have his way with you in your life. He wants to manipulate you into doing wrong and separate you from me. Okay? Cain was still angry. And this is what I think happened. Okay? The next verse says, now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked Abel and killed him. I don't think that this was like the next day. I think God had this conversation with Cain, and Cain started stewing on it. And Cain's like, man, why does Abel get the good stuff? And they're looking down on me. And Cain started feeling sorry for himself. And he let this fester and build and build and build. Who messed up? Cain. It wasn't Abel's fault. Abel had nothing to do with it. God didn't say Abel didn't say I reject what you're giving me. God did. Right? So Abel's not even in it. Abel's like just another guy that happened to be there. Right? Who here's ever been around somebody else and you're like, it seems like things are going their way and not going your way, and you get mad at them and it really has nothing to do with them. Dang. Right? I've done that. And that's what I think happened with Cain. I think Cain really didn't have any reason to be upset with Abel, but I think he targeted his anger towards Abel and let it begin to fester. And the whole time, sin here is the devil. The whole time the devil's like, hey, you're right, it's his fault. Hey man, it's not you, you're doing everything right. Yeah, what you do? God didn't like it. But it's not your fault, it's Abel's fault. See, if his wasn't so good, yours wouldn't look so bad. Right? So that's what was going on here, guys. So Cain looks at his brother and says, let's go out to the field. I bet he wasn't like, hey, let's go out to the field. In my mind, it was like, let's go out to the field. I want to show you something out in the field. I think this was premeditated murder. Premeditated means you think about it beforehand. It doesn't, there's regular manslaughter where, you're just kind of thrown in a position where you have to make a decision, you make it, and you wind up killing another person. And then there's premeditated murder. Premeditated murder means you thought it over before you did it. It was planned. Cain entices Abel and says, hey, let's go out to the field. He probably said, hey, I want to show you something out here. Abel probably didn't even know what was going on. Abel was his brother. He was probably like, yeah, bro, no problem. Yeah, what do you want to show me? And the next thing you know, Cain's beating him to death. Now, I realize, guys, that this is about 4,000 years ago when all this happened, or maybe even longer than that. I'm not exactly sure how long ago it was. In my Bible, it said at least 2000 BC, which is at least 4,000 years ago. But in verse 9, Cain is before the Lord again. But something that I thought, one, he took him out. When he took him out to the field, how many people were on the earth at this time? Four. So Cain took him out somewhere where nobody knew they were at and killed him. So he done it in private. He lured him out into a private place and then murdered him. And I thought, how far would a brother have to go? How deep in sin? How far would his mind have to go for him to be willing to kill his own brother? Who here has a sibling? Me too. Okay? I got a bunch of them. And there's been lots of times when I'm going to be like, I'm going to kill you! But I really didn't mean it. I meant stop messing with me because I'm going to put it to you. But you know what? When my brother used to tell me he was going to kill me all the time. Like, he called me a midget because I was smaller. He's like, listen up, midget. I'm going to kill you. Get out of my face. But you know what? One time I started a fight with a guy that was a lot bigger than me. That's at school. And when he started pounding on me, you know who came to my rescue? Your brother. Tim. My brother. Who won? My brother. And then that guy's big brother caught up with me later. But either way. I'm still friends with that guy's big brother, but either way, here God says to Cain, he's like, hey, where's your brother Abel? Now listen to what Cain says to him right here. One, Cain, because of pride, right here got sassy with God. Listen to what he says. Then the Lord said to Cain, where's your brother Abel? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? And this is Cain talking to God. Like, with the hammer down, like, flick you and you go flying. Who's ever seen Ant-Man? You know where right? Imagine that. Like, Cain's talking to God with sass. Think about where his mind had to go to get to that point where he's like, I ain't afraid of you. Until God puts a hammer down on him. Okay. Did God kill him? God did not kill him. But something else that I thought about here is that Cain didn't have remorse. He killed his brother and had no remorse. And then the Lord said, what have you done? Did the Lord know what he said? What he did? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the next thing he says, listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground. I got to scoot down. Driven from the ground, which opened its mouth and received your brother's blood by your hand. And then he goes on to say, basically, when you work the ground, you're going to get a bunch of thorns and thistles and weeds and everything else in your crop because of what you did.
Goat heads.
But God doesn't destroy him. In fact, God goes on to say, I will protect you. Even though you've done this terrible thing, I will protect you. Because eventually Cain does repent. But I thought about this, and as I went, I thought about what else does the Bible say about it? Listen, guys, I believe that, now this is me, I believe that we are getting close to the last days. I believe that we are close to the Lord coming back. That's my belief. I believe, looking at what I've read from the Bible and looking around at everything that's going on, I believe that Jesus could come back at any time. That's what I believe. And this is what the Bible says in Mark 13:12. It says, brother will betray brother to death, and father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. Think about what is being said right there. Children will rebel against their parents and have their parents put to death. This is what sin gets you. This is where it can take you. And it doesn't take everybody to that point, but it can take you to that point. There are people out here in this prison that murdered their own parents, murdered their brothers, murdered their sisters, murdered the whole family. But God goes on to say in James 4:7, he said, submit yourselves to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. You remember back there when he told Cain, he said, listen, you got to control this. Sin lies at the door, but you have to control it. Now he's saying, resist the devil and he will flee from you. 7:14. Now, it goes on to talk about in the last days that there will be terrible days. People will, listen to what this says. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Who is seeing that go on right now? How many times do you go on social media and it's like one person is totally bashing somebody else and it's really over nothing?
Yeah.
I mean, they're like tearing each other to pieces and it's over stupid junk. I mean, we're watching it all the time on the media and everything else. Guys, we are close. I'm telling you that right now. And listen to this. This is the next thing. Now, this is straight out of 2 Timothy. The next thing, what God's talking about, all these people that are dealing with sin and letting sin control them like that. And God says, have nothing to do with such people. Have nothing to do with them. Because they will drag you down. They will suck you in. They will take you to places you don't want to be. There are men of deprived minds who, as far as faith is concerned, are rejected. This is straight out of the Bible. But they will not get very far because, as in the case of those men, their folly will be clear to everybody. You guys see those guys, right? They're doing stupid junk and you're like, this dude's totally off base. But how many people also see people are doing crazy junk? This stuff that you guys are seeing in the riots and stuff like that, 50, 60 years ago, that stuff didn't happen like that. I mean, people somewhat had respect for one another. And now we're at this point where it's like, anything goes. I'm going to give you a few examples of what sin does to people, guys. Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery because his dad liked him more than them. That's true. And that was I would say, not the wisest thing his dad could have done. But the bottom line is, it made them so mad at their brother that at first they were going to murder him. And then Judah stepped up and said, you know what, maybe we should sell him and make some money instead. So they sold him into slavery. Now, how many of you guys ever think, man, this stuff happens? I know this stuff happened in the Bible, but what's a real world, what's something today is that junk still going on today? Do you guys think so? Yeah. Listen to this. Anna and Amanda Ramirez were identical twins. This happened in the early 2000s. There's a photo of them smiling together and having fun, and 2 hours later, Amanda murdered Anna, her sister. 3-year-old Francis Kent was murdered by his half-sister, 16-year-old. His half-sister was 16. And when asked why she did it, it was because she was jealous of her father's affection towards him. Does that sound familiar to Cain and Abel? On October 26, 2009, William Gorzinski plunged a knife into his brother's chest. Now listen to what this was over. They got in an argument over computer speakers. So he killed his brother. The reason I'm telling you guys all this is because sin takes you there. Every one of these people out here in this prison, they didn't start out that way. It wasn't like they were born and just instantly was like, decided I'm going to be a serial killer. Every one of them had to make decisions. Every one of them. They had to make decisions. Am I going to choose to do what's right, or am I going to choose to do what's wrong? Am I going to fight sin and control it, or am I going to let it control me? Listen, guys, straight up, the devil, the Bible clearly says that he is going around this world like a roaring lion, and he is looking for who he can devour. He wants to kill you. And he doesn't want to just kill you. He wants to use you to kill somebody else. Some of this stuff, I read some of this stuff, like one of them, this dude killed his 4-year-old sister. He was like 18 years old. Killed his 4-year-old sister. And you know what he says about it? He said, as I was plunging the knife into her, she said, "Stop. Why are you killing me?" His 4-year-old sister. Think about where your mind would have to go that you would be willing to murder your own, a 4-year-old. Some of these guys killed one guy killed a 6-month-old. Think about where your mind would have to go. And I'm straight up going to tell you, there is nobody in this room that if you don't control it, that is not capable of that stuff right there. Every person in this room is tempted in similar ways. If you don't think so, the Bible says it. And if you ask me, if you said, "Hey, have you ever thought of murdering somebody?" I'd tell you, yep. And I'll tell you what, if you ask probably 95% of the population, they'd probably tell you the same thing. That's just the truth of it. You know why? Because what's common to one of us is common to all of us. If you guys haven't thought it yet, I guarantee you by the time you're 44, you're going to. Because people tick you off. But just because I've thought about it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and do it. Now, we're almost done here, guys. I'm going to skip a couple. The Bible goes on to say, "Be alert and of sound mind, that your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." Listen, guys, like I said, temptation is common to all of us. Every one of us. But temptation itself is not sin. You can be tempted. You can think horrible things. Jenny was just telling, who knows who Billy Graham is? Okay. Jenny was just telling me that she was reading a book, and Billy Graham at the beginning of it said, "Hey, listen, if you're lifting me up on a pedestal, don't, because if you knew what went through my mind, you would not think I'm as good a guy as I am." Billy Graham. You know why? Because he was tempted just like I am, and just like every one of you guys will be. But you have to control that. And I know that it's easy not to. I know that it's easy just to go along with the crowd. Because going along with the crowd is the easiest thing to do. Bucking up on them is not. It's hard. Billy Graham says, the sin is when you use temptation for giving in. And he goes on to say, none of us should deliberately place ourselves in a position to be tempted. Satan will always attack where you are most vulnerable. But each one is tempted with his own evil desire, and is dragged away and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, so after you've thought about it, and then it gives birth to sin. So you've allowed it to control you to the point where it gives birth to sin. And then it says when sin is full grown, it gives birth to death. It's not just the death, it's not just you. Listen, Cain done a terrible thing. But guys, there are people throughout the Bible that God spoke to over and over and over and gave them chance after chance after chance. And they would not turn. They would not heed the words of the Lord. And it wound up destroying them. And I'm here to tell you right now, Satan wants to have you. His ultimate goal is to take you to hell. And you guys know there's no escape. Once you're there, you're there. I've always heard this. I've heard people say sin will take you farther than you ever thought you'd go. It'll keep you longer than you ever thought you'd stay. And it'll make you pay more than you ever thought you'd pay. There are people that have allowed themselves to be controlled by sin and done horrible things. And then later become Christians. One of them's Paul. And he had to live with it every day. He had to live with the mistakes. He had to live with the fact that he let sin control him. Guys, straight up, I don't want you to live with that. It stinks. You can be redeemed from that. You can be redeemed from it. But you still got to live with it. Sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you. But you must rule over it. Okay? We're going to go into small